This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, alongside my broadcast partner and fun, the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, I'm glad you made it back safely from Buffalo. My goodness, man, the Gronk really came strong on a player, got himself suspended in a key week, too. He's going to be missed for a lot of fantasy players who have him as arguably the number one tight end, and he's not going to be there. You made it back safely. Stay tuned for this Saturday. We'll recap your trip. We'll recap why in the hell you're sending me certain snaps on Snapchat. And we obviously got to talk about the Silverdome implosion and memories of the Silverdome. But this is the Tigers Talk podcast. What say you regarding the world of baseball? Lots to get into.
Yeah, and the most intriguing storyline to maybe tackle this week on Tigers Talk is Alan Trammell. Finally, we'll find out whether or not he gets elected to the Hall of Fame via the modern baseball era ballot and committee, which...
Why?
Now, this committee, by the way, it's not the Baseball Writers Association of America. You have peers of his on this modern era committee, including George Brett, Rod Carew, Dennis Eckersley, Don Sutton, Dave Winfield, and Robin Yount. Other members of the modern baseball era committee include former manager Bobby Cox, who managed the Toronto Blue Jays and the Atlanta Braves. Former executive John Sherholtz, current executive Sandy Alderson with the Mets, Paul Beesteen, Bob Castellini, Bill DeWitt, media members Bob Elliott, Steve Hurt, and Jason Stark. Some notable guys there, some guys whose names I probably just butchered, but a few notable guys definitely, and guys that were around the game when Trammell was playing, most notably too. And that's the reason why they are on this modern baseball era committee, to determine whether or not Trammell and the other members of this ballot will get in. And once again, really quick to clear it all up, 75% or 12 votes are needed for election. Results will be announced on MLB Network.
Many people believe that Trammell is the leading candidate for sure to be elected. What say you? Do you think that 12 people of the 16 will vote him in? Based on the players, if they look at it and they evaluate what he brought to the table, they evaluate his career, I don't see more than one or two people leaving him off the ballot. I do believe that he will be elected via this platform.
He's a favorite of the 10-person ballot to get in, but there's already one committee member who's been on the record as this Detroit News article from Tony Paul, one of our favorite guests that we've had on Tigers Talk. He said that, you have to realize and bring up that Jason Stark, formerly of ESPN, ESPN.com, has already admitted that he will not vote for Alan Trammell. So if Stark sticks to that, Trammell could only afford 3 more no votes because he needs the 12 yes votes from this committee.
What are your thoughts about Jason Stark kind of coming out already and saying he's not voting for Alan Trammell?
I would have to say I don't know his reasoning though, Doc, but I would say because when you look at the percentage of votes that he got in the past when he was on the actual, Major League Baseball Hall of Fame ballot, and that's what the Baseball Writers Association of America votes on. Well, when that was the case, his voting percentage, it never exceeded 40.9% of the 75% necessary to get enshrined into Cooperstown. So maybe Stark is looking at that, and that's the reason why he's not going to vote in Trammell via this modern baseball era ballot. But he is the best candidate on this ballot, hands down, when you look at his numbers across the board, and specifically his wins above replacement, as they fare favorably. When you look at Barry Larkin, who's in the Hall of Fame, when you look at Ozzie Smith, who's already in the Hall of Fame too, those guys have numbers similar or numbers that really aren't on par with. Like Ozzie Smith, offensively, he was a defensive wizard, won all those gold gloves. Well, guess what? Alan Trammell was by far a better offensive performer at shortstop throughout his major league career. So when you look at Ozzie Smith being in, you would have to believe, well, Alan Trammell deserves to be in too.
Does it cheapen his election should he get in this way? I mean, there is a huge notion a lot of people come to the table with, and they'll say, if you have to debate a player, he's not a Hall of Famer. there are some people who are old school and say that if it's not unanimous, if it's not a situation where he's elected right away through the certain channels that you are elected to get into the Hall of Fame, that he doesn't deserve to be in. And so should he get in through this avenue, does it cheapen it at all in your eyes?
Well, maybe what they should do with the Hall of Fame is maybe set up separate sections of the Hall, which I've heard people talk about, where you have the first ballot Hall of Famers included in a different section of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Maybe you do it like that to distinguish those that were voted in via the first ballot and others that were voted in on their second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th try. Maybe to separate it that way would really distinguish,
because we're starting to get into the whole
guys.
We're starting to get into the whole participation trophy kind of thing where, you put him on so many ballots, eventually he gets in. I feel like it cheapens it. If I'm Alan Trammell, I'm a little bit grumpy and saying, look, my numbers do compare to Ozzie Smith, and they do compare to those who are already in the Hall of Fame. But to go in this way, it seems a little bit cheap. But, I mean, many people in Detroit really pay attention to it. But like we've discussed before, how can you argue that Alan Trammell is an all-time great in the major leagues when your home organization, the organization you played for, doesn't acknowledge you as an all-time great by showing you that honor and retiring your number? So if you really wanted to champion that position, the Tigers organization probably should take the initial steps, which is finally have a day where you retire the jersey numbers of Lou Whitaker, Alan Trammell. And it will probably be in 2017 or 2018 because they're going to have a hard time drawing 1.5 million fans in those 2 years. My goodness. I mean, we're talking about the heyday of the Tigers where they were drawing 3 million fans a season. They might not get 2 million fans in 2 years at Tiger Stadium with how bad things are going to get. When we say bad, you're going to have an opportunity to get some good seats pretty cheap, I think, in the next 2 years.
Absolutely. And really quick, Trammell has said himself that he would like to go in alongside Lou Whitaker. He'd rather wait until Lou Whitaker is enshrined if he ever truly is himself.
Now, Vito, do you want to hear some shit, some funny stuff that did not need to be reported and that was kind of like the master of the obvious kind of stuff? So guess what? Japanese pitcher and outfielder Shohei Ohtani is not coming to the Detroit Tigers. He decided, and I'm surprised it was reported, that because earlier in the week it was reported how many teams were on his list, the finalists were revealed. Guess what? The Detroit Tigers were not on it. I was shocked. I was like, no way. A prized player that's new coming into Major League Baseball doesn't want to come to the Detroit Tigers. No shit, Sherlock, right? And so it gets reported, and I just laugh and go, some of the teams, obviously, that are considering him, the Cubs, the Rangers, Dodgers, Angels, San Francisco, San Diego, and the Seattle Mariners are all in contention. Obviously, Vito, were you shocked? The Seattle Mariners are in contention for a Japanese player.
And you know why? Ichiro Suzuki made that great transition, seamless transition, won the American League Rookie of the Year and American League MVP when he came over from Japan. So why wouldn't the Mariners be in contention?
What's the talk of this dude? Why is there so much hubbub about this player? A lot of reports on him.
Well, I know he can play both ways, and arguably, he's the greatest player since Babe Ruth. Well,
oh, really?
In the States and over there in Japan, he is their Babe Ruth, their version of Babe Ruth, who, remember, could pitch, was a great pitcher at first, then became this All-Star Hall of Fame slugger. And I guess this Ohtani is that kind of ball player that can play both ways, and he wants a small market club on the West Coast preferably. That's why all these smaller market clubs are in contention for him still. And others like the Yankees, everybody thought the Bronx Bombers, a natural fit for this dude. Guess what? No thanks, he said to the Yanks organization.
Oh yeah, news regarding the Yankees. They went out, they found their guy. And many people are kind of hearkening to the Tigers going with a inexperienced manager, but many people do believe that Boone is going to be very successful there because of his past success as a major leaguer.
But he's been a broadcaster, a first-year manager.
It's Aaron Boone, right?
Yes, it is, Doc. And now, do you know what he was previously doing before he got hired to be the Yankees' next skipper?
He was a MLB Network representative?
Almost. ESPN, MLB analyst on Sunday Night Baseball in their booth, calling the top-notch games every Sunday night for them, but no coaching experience. Now, a great baseball family in the Boone family. Bob Boone, Aaron, Brett, his brother, with the Mariners, had a great career. Aaron Boone had a long-tenured Major League Baseball career, too. Now, he went from team to team, and remember, he's known for that big home run he hit against the Bo Sox for the Yankees. That was his call to fame. Nowhere near a Hall of Fame caliber player when he played in the big leagues, but great knowledge for the game and a great mind analytically, supposedly, and that's the new wave of Major League Baseball, and these managers, for the most part, being hired, is that they favor analytics. They embrace the analytical movement. And this is the new era of baseball where analytics are being fully embraced and by major league skippers from team to team, pretty much, well, outside of the Tigers, maybe with Ron Gardenhire. Still a very questionable hire, not to go down that route right now, but Aaron Boone still... There are question marks with hiring him when you have a team ready to win. Joe Girardi led a team last year with the Yanks that overachieved, getting them to the ALCS. Nobody saw the Yankees reaching the American League Championship Series last year. Nobody saw that coming. And Girardi led them all the way to the ALCS, despite their flaws as a ball club and their youth. Really, they're all-around youth as a ball club. And that's what many people thought would keep the Yankees from going far in last year's postseason, is that they had all that youth. Well, Girardi was able to catapult the Yankees to still a high level of baseball that allowed them to reach the American League Championship Series. And how is Girardi rewarded? By being dismissed as Yankee skipper. And now you hire this guy with no prior coaching experience. And Aaron Boone, great knowledge, a great analytical mind, supposedly. But still, I don't think you're upgrading very much here. And I don't think Aaron Boone's going to be the guy that leads your team to the World Series and to a World Series championship at this point, Doc. So questionable for me, too, when looking at this hire made by the Yankees.
Yeah, I know they got some flack a little bit for the way things went down with Joe Girardi. But listen, when you're with an organization for a significant period of time, sometimes a change for the sake of change sometimes has to take place. Many people had come out and said that Joe Girardi's voice just got a little bit old and he was a little bit of a crotchety dude. And sometimes when you rub management the wrong way, then it's time for a change. I mean, shoot, in 10 years, if you're still sending me Snapchats of yourself doing some various dances, I might get annoyed when I'm in my 50s.
Yeah, and I might be annoyed with myself and thinking, what am I doing with my life? So that could be the case too. But yes, this, I think you've seen a lot of people call this hire into question for a variety of reasons and obvious reasons too that we've already laid out ourselves here on this week's episode of Tigers Talk, Doc.
All right. Anything else that you've been peeking at in the world of baseball? I really, to be honest with you, haven't checked in a whole heck of a lot. And the reason why I honestly didn't know where Aaron Boone worked was I don't watch Sunday Night Baseball. You know what I mean? I know, obviously, the basics in that they do a 3-man booth, and one of them is Jessica Mendoza, I believe, right?
Correct. You nailed that one right there. And
How did I know that?
Look at you. You know that. Well, I can probably believe why you know that.
I think she is talked about a little bit in terms of being a pioneer and things like that, but is she reviewed favorably in terms of how she does her job? I mean, I know that she's a woman doing the job, but I've never really listened all that much to her work. When the Tigers do play on ESPN, I'm more of a radio guy. I can sit and watch the game on TV or turn it on the radio. So is she good?
People like her. People respect her. She has great knowledge of the game.
Okay.
And she played softball at a high level. Remember, for Team USA in the Olympics, great Olympian. So you got to respect her for what she knows, and she does know something. And really quick, the Sunday Night Baseball booth shakeup is extreme because Mendoza is the only one being left over because Dan Shulman, the play-by-play man, is stepping down from the broadcast booth for Sunday Night Baseball. He's still going to call games, college basketball, and other sporting events for ESPN, but he's getting away from Major League Baseball, so you're losing his voice, a great play-by-play man for Major League Baseball for many years as part of that Sunday Night Baseball booth as well, Doc.
Gotcha.
And you're not sad. You're not disappointed at all, I can tell, because you weren't even watching the Sunday Night Baseball games anyways.
Not too much, no.
So you never knew about Aaron Boone's great knowledge, expansive knowledge for the game of baseball.
For me personally, I'm a fan of intentional talk. I'm a fan of Chris Rose. I like the way he broadcasts, his witty sense of humor. I'm more of a fan of that kind of entertainment. And obviously, ESPN is a fan of the show, too. They pinched the show from Major League Baseball in a cost-cutting move. So it's pretty simple to partner up with Major League Baseball. So I'm more of a fan of, actually, to be honest, if you watch the NFL Network, you watch Major League Baseball Network, you watch NBA TV, and you watch NHL, the network programs are pretty good. I mean, they do a pretty decent job. Now, there's not many huge stars on there. MLB is picking up in that area, but I do enjoy the roundtable discussions on all the networks. I mean, they do have analysts who are former players and things like that, but ESPN gets stars as well. But I really do like the 4 networks that are dedicated to their own sports. I do think they do a decent job.
Which one do you think I watch the most?
MLB Network.
Bob Costas, by the way, you said a lack of star talent or star power. They have Bob Costas calling games there.
Oh, you still doing it there?
Matt Vasgersian calls games. Jim Cott, do you know that name? Legendary pitcher from years past. Okay. Harold Reynolds, Huggin' Harold, as I love to call him. He got dismissed from ESPN. He's been on MLB Network for a while now as part of their various studio programming. MLB Tonight is their premier flagship show. That's their Baseball Tonight, and Baseball Tonight's kind of been cut remember, from
Right.
ESPN, and that's why Intentional Talk, which you were getting at, is now a show every single day, even during the offseason, I believe.
Gotcha.
And people do respect and like, maybe even love Chris Rose, Kevin Millar for their antics, and they're funny dudes, off-the-cuff humor, and they're entertaining. And they have knowledge, too, I would say.
And that's why I don't know as much about who calls the games, because most of the time I'm watching Tigers games on Fox Sports Detroit. I'm talking about just the studio shows. NFL Network obviously has Rich Eisen, Steve Mariucci, and the crew there. But I'm talking about like on NHL TV, NBA TV, and baseball. I think the studio analysts, they're getting up there in terms of marquee names and stuff like that. But I think the bigger names that people know are on ESPN.
And like on TNT for the NBA now, TNT has some of their broadcasters go on NBA TV, especially during the playoffs, during the NBA Finals. Like, you'll see Charles Barkley on there during the NBA Finals, Kenny the Jet Smith, and others like that. Chris Webber's on NBA TV. Zeke, Isaiah Thomas is on NBA TV. So you have some notable names inside the studio for their studio programming when you go from network to network for these professional sports leagues. And one of them that I never watch is NHL Network. I'm not a big NHL fan, so I've never gotten into watching the NHL Network whatsoever, Doc.
Gotcha. Any news that you peeked into regarding the Detroit Tigers outside of Alan Trammell?
Well, really quick, the hot stove league-wide is dead. How about how cold it is right now?
Oh, we failed to acknowledge. I thought you would have brought it up pretty quickly. My guy, I'm devastated. I'll bring up next a player after the break who was let go by the Tigers, was not offered a contract, non-tendered. We got to talk about him. We got to relive his memories. Won't take long, but we got to relive the highlights of a former Tiger after this quick and first time out.
His initials BR. I know that much. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break on Tigers Talk. Doc, and as all of you listeners hopefully know, the Detroit Sports Commission is one of our fine sponsors at the DSP network, and since '01, the Detroit Sports Commission has applied its expert touch to marketing and to selling the Metro Detroit area as a marquee destination for regional, national, and international amateur sporting events. And through the Detroit Sports Commission's help, these events have attracted thousands of visitors and pumped millions, and I mean millions of dollars into our local economy. It is why Detroit is now not only the place where champions are made, but also the place where championships are played. To find out more about the Detroit Sports Commission and all of the events they are bringing to our very region, please follow the DSC on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. And make sure to check out their fine website at DetroitSports.org. Back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, I am Vito Chirco. That is a Doc across from me inside the studio as usual for each recording of Tigers Talk. And Doc, a favorite player of yours from years past is no longer going to be a Tiger in 2018, and you are just so darn sad. I can see you right now just crying. I bet you've been bawling at home late at night before you fall asleep because you just are going to miss this guy so much. And his name is what, Doc?
Bruce Rondon is no longer a Detroit Tiger, and his exit was kind of in a way that was befitting of his lack of talent. They offered a lot of players contracts, but they decided to non-tender my guy, Bruce Rondon. And it's a sad day, but 10 years with the organization, all we can do is discuss his lack of success, his exit, and maybe discuss the chances of him having some success elsewhere. But we do got to give him his due, so we'll, discuss his exit a little bit. We'll intro it with a song. Sorry, Bruce, man. Just didn't work out. Unfortunately for Bruce Rondon, 100-mile-an-hour fastball that you couldn't control wasn't good enough. Brad Ausmus said that you were lazy. Sent your ass home.
And if Brad Ausmus is doing that and making an impact on the club, I mean, that tells you. That speaks volumes about you and your lack of effort, right? I mean, it was about that. It came down to that with Bruce Rondon. He threw 100 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour plus, but he didn't show effort. He would cut down on the velocity, throw these weak pitches up there to major league hitters that would just trash them. Because you got to try against major league hitters. I don't care how fast you throw.
Rondon's fat. See you later.
Finally, goodbye to Bruce Rondon. Long time coming for Bruce. Brett Ausmus's best move maybe as manager ever for the Tigers was booting Bruce Rondon early before the season ended. Before the season ended in 2015, he sent him home because of a lack of effort. And guess what? That reflects on him, his character, and it reflects poorly on him. And then his teammates, what does that say to his teammates? Well, it showcases to his teammates that you don't care about them. And when you showcase that to your teammates, guess what? They don't want you to be a part of the clubhouse or a part of the ball club either. And that's what Bruce Rondon, the impact that he made on the team towards the end of his tenure, and as way back as 2015 with the Tigers, when the team and people still thought that he had a chance to be an upper echelon lights-out closer. Guess what? He never became that and was very ineffective, very irrelevant, especially towards the end of his tenure with the Tiger stock.
And I know you love to rub it in that I was a supporter. Listen, Dave Dombrowski is a guy that exclusively drafts big arms. Kyle Farnsworth, Joel Zamaya, Justin Verlander, big arms. Shane Green, individuals with high velocity pitches are appealing. And many people felt like, including Dave Dombrowski, that Bruce Rondon had something. And that's why they were able to even bring him back after a surgery. And he was able to come back and throw 100 miles an hour after Tommy John surgery. And so I thought a guy that has that much capability can bounce back from surgery and still hit 3 digits. You maybe invest in, but he's a mental case and he's lazy. It's unfortunate that this is the story with Bruce Rondon. He just wasn't able to, really keep a spot with the Tigers. He wasn't able to cement his legacy, but
he had no legacy.
He had no
legacy. There's no legacy for Bruce Rondon to speak of, and he couldn't get any other pitch over the plate. He had no other pitch outside of his fastball. Great velocity. We've spoken about it ad nauseum here, but guess what? It didn't mean anything at the end of the day because he couldn't get another pitch over the plate consistently to get out batters.
Oh, so you're going to grade him an F for his tenure?
Oh, probably a D, because he showed something at one point, and he was envisioned as or viewed as the closer of the future, even as the closer of the present going into a couple of seasons in the past, especially when my boy Dave Dombrowski was leading the ball club in the front office of the Tigers. But guess what? Because he never lived up to the bill, Doc, the best grade that you can possibly give to Bruce Rondon is a D.
Oh.
Come on. I mean, what are you going to give him?
Yeah, probably a C minus.
Please, a D is the best grade that you can give to him.
He had some appearances where he got some guys out.
Good. So I probably could do that too, and you could. We've seen major league hitters do that in outings at times when there's a blowout going on and they have to enter the game because there's no more bullpen arms available in that given game. So come on. What does it really mean to get a few batters out once in a while, which Bruce Rondon did, but man, he was not an effective relief pitcher at the end of games consistently enough, and he wore out his welcome, and he did so pretty darn quick, in my opinion, Doc.
Oh, so sad, Vito. One of those situations where the way they did it, too, is I just love it. Non-tender deal, where they're like, we're not even going to offer you a contract.
Because they could have offered him something cheap, because guess what? What are other teams going to offer him right now? Mm-hmm. Minor league deals.
Okay, is that what's going to happen?
Tigers could have offered him that. Yeah. That showcases how bad, how irrelevant Bruce Rondon has become from a guy viewed as the closer of the future, the closer of the present at one point with the Tigers dating back to 2015 to 2016 to a guy now who is so irrelevant, Doc. They couldn't even offer him a contract. And realistically, how other major league clubs, I believe, view him right now is as a minor league guy, a guy that you take a chance on, but a low risk, high reward kind of guy, a guy that you offer a minor league deal to and you offer nothing more to.
Oh, man, Vito, the hits keep continuing. There were more. There were more dudes that got let go by the Tigers. The shakeup continues. One more time before we discuss the next wave. Anthony Gose. See ya. Steven Moya. Goodbye, my friend. Not going to be on the Tigers in 2018.
Guys that couldn't hit good enough to maintain major league roster spots. Simply, when you break it down, that's what it comes to, Doc.
I thought Anthony Gose was going to be our next big-time reliever.
He was going to be the center fielder of the future, then our late-inning reliever of the future and present, and guess what? He never became anything of high magnitude, of high-caliber relevance, and that's why we're saying goodbye to Anthony Gose. Now, in Steven Moya's case, How about the fact that we thought he could be a fourth outfielder, maybe even start every day in the corner outfield, one of the corner outfield spots because of his big, powerful bat? But guess what? He couldn't connect enough to make contact, to get on base consistently enough, and he wore out his welcome because of that, and because he couldn't field the ball. He didn't know how to judge a baseball out there in the outfield, couldn't track down one properly, so I mean, his services have been rendered. So his services, Anthony Gose's services, Bruce Rondon's services, guys that really wore out their welcome a long time ago, that we knew it was inevitable that they would be let go by the ball club at some point. And glad to say that those guys are long gone now from the Tigers. And the question mark is, regarding all of their careers is, well, do they have a career in Major League Baseball realistically anymore? Will somebody else, another Major League Baseball club, pick up any of those guys? Doc.
Steven Moya. I mean, if his bat and defense come around together.
But guess what? That's two things.
All right.
Come on. Well, too questionable at this point in his Major League career. Well, a Major League career that he doesn't have, that really his qualities, his attributes don't warrant. Well, guess what? Nobody else is going to pick him up because he can't do either of those things. You got to at least be able to do one of those things consistently, fielding the baseball in the corner outfield or hitting the baseball. And in his defense, as a big dude, hitting the baseball a long way like Aaron Judge can, like Giancarlo Stanton can, a guy that will be dealt soon enough to the Giants or to the Cardinals. Giancarlo Stanton, that is, of the Miami Marlins currently. Now, Moya never became that. A hitter of that mold, a guy that could slug consistently enough, but also hit for contact at the Major League level with the Detroit Tigers organization, Doc.
All right, so you're looking at a couple guys that are going to go somewhere and maybe get a minor league deal or a situation where they get a tryout. Maybe they find refuge with Boston because of their relationships, maybe previously with Dave Dombrowski, but in the end, we don't see, in terms of the potential for them to have success elsewhere. I'll start with all three names, and you tell me who has the biggest chance or a chance at all of success. Bruce Rondon, is he a player? Is he an all-star at any time in his career in the next 5 years?
I'm going to say no.
Anthony Gose?
Nope.
And Steven Moya?
Hell no.
Bus galore.
I think Rondon has the best chance to be something in the next 5 years. Never an all-star. None of these guys are all-stars, really ever were. Never should have really been talked about as being all-stars. Rondon probably still, because he still has a sexy big arm, might be something, but of high relevance, no, not an all-star, not even near that caliber of a relief pitcher. Now, Anthony Gose, he couldn't even, cut the mustard seed. Now, hitting the baseball as a center fielder, couldn't do it at the Major League level. And now, as a relief arm, he has a long way to go before he amounts to anything. I don't think he ever becomes anything. And then Steven Moya, he can't hit or field. How is he going to warrant a Major League roster spot once again? It's not going to happen. Exactly. No way, Jose, with any of those three. Now, the best case, once again, is Bruce Rondon because of his big, lively, sexy arm. Doc.
Man, Steven Moya. I mean, everybody kind of thought that when he first came up and his offensive prowess kind of was a little bit sexy, but then they threw his ass out in the outfield, and it was not that great, man. It was pretty bad, and it didn't get any better. That's the tough part was, when you had that outfield at Comerica, you have to have some level of concepts of defensive ability to play out in the outfield. And there were some bad plays, some bad throws, missing cutoffs, and he just didn't have the knack for success in the outfield. It was kind of funny. I'm trying to hold my chuckles, but it was bad.
He took some bad routes, horrible routes, dropped some balls that were easy catchable balls that were cans of corn, as my dad would put it, for outfielders, Major League outfielders especially. And then he didn't hit in the minors. I mean, so these guys, the best case scenario is that they get a spring training invite. All of them. That is their best case scenario collectively. Sad but true with all those three guys that were highly touted at one point, especially Bruce Rondon, and then Steven Moya and Anthony Gose somewhere down the line too.
All right. Anything else roster-wise that you paid attention to with the Detroit Tigers? I mean, I know that a player that was injured late in the season people are paying attention to is Alex Wilson, an individual that we can discuss too, because in previous podcasts we've kind of been discussing players that are going to be on the roster and what we expect from them. Alex Wilson is a tough pitcher to kind of pin down and think about and how to conceptualize, because he has stuff, but when he goes south, man, does he go south. And he's been the victim of some big innings towards the end prior to his breaking his leg, I believe. And Alex Wilson, what do you think about him? Do you think that he can bounce back in 2018? I feel like they're going to count on him. He does have the moxie. To me, he does have the grinder mentality. He's a bulldog out there on the mound, but just in terms of talent, I think that teams with offensive weapons can do some things. They can take advantage of Alex Wilson. And I don't like, basically, the way I'm conceptualizing it, I don't like roller coaster pitchers. Those that can have hot streaks and then those that can have really bad cold streaks. We need consistency in that bullpen. And unfortunately, you hate to say it, but sometimes you're the product of your surroundings. And Alex Wilson has been part of some atrocious bullpens. And if there's something you could get for him of value, maybe in 2018, I would probably have no problem saying sayonara, Alex Wilson.
Well, for the Tigers relievers coming back next season that were a part of the team in 2017, Shane Green most reliable. Wouldn't you argue that? I think you would have to argue that Shane Green is the most reliable guy returning from last year's bullpen. Number 2 is Alex Wilson. Number 3 is Daniel Stumpf, the Rule 5 draft pick of the Tigers, lefty out of the pen. He became a reliable guy for the most part in 2017, much more effective than a lot of those trashy bullpen arms that they had to rely upon in 2017, too.
Look at Alex Wilson's numbers. His ERA and whip ballooned to ERA of 4.50, whip of 1.36. Opponents hit .279 and slugged .438 against him, and he allowed a career-high 7 home runs. And as a reliever.
But his FIP is fielding independent pitch. I don't know if you have that up there, but I bet it's better. I believe, and actually I'll guarantee it was better than his earned run average last year with the Tigers. But he wasn't great. He wasn't extremely effective or reliable. If you can get a good offer in return for him, you deal him. You deal Shane Green, too, if you get a good enough offer in return for Shane Green's services. So these guys are not locks to be on the Tigers' Major League opening day roster come 2018. I'm not going to guarantee that right now here on Tigers Talk. But when you break down who were the most reliable arms in the Tigers bullpen last year on a consistent basis, Alex Wilson was still up there, but that speaks volumes of how poor the Tigers bullpen was collectively in 2017 too.
All right, going forward, I definitely want to get your opinion on players because I know you watch and you have strong opinions, and I think most of the time you're right. I mean, you're right on Bruce Rondon. You're right on several players that the Tigers have looked at and have let go. So what's Vito's scouting report? Alex Wilson, 2018. Rebound season? Or is it a disaster or status quo where he maybe even gets worse, gives up more home runs? Is he a viable option? Is he a guy that will have a comeback season and do some things? Hit me with Vito's scouting report, Alex Wilson.
I'll say that he's at least a member of the Tigers. He's not going to be their closer. But when you look at baseballreference.com's projections for Alex Wilson in 2018, it says a 3.92 earned run average. I'm going to say that based on what he did, when you look at his FIP for last season, his fielding independent pitching number, which amounted to 4.17 in 2017, I'm going to say that his earned run average ends up being closer to that than it was in 2017 when it was 4.5. So I'm going to say that his earned run average is a solid 4.05, so a little bit higher than baseballreference.com's current projection for Alex Wilson in 2018. But I'm going to say a 4.05 earned run average to play safe here, but better than last year from Alex Wilson, in my opinion, Doc.
All right, anything else before we get out of here? Always enjoy talking some baseball with you, looking at some players that are going to remain on the 2018 roster. I think in past podcasts, we've looked at Castellanos, we've looked at Jose Iglesias.
Jeimer Candelario, we've looked at already,
too. We've looked at Candelario. We've looked at Zimmerman. Unfortunately, the rumors are still there, but he's still a member of the Tigers at the time of this recording, so he's not a Washington Nationals just yet. We're all crossing our fingers. Maybe that in winter meetings it'll take place or at some time this offseason. We're hoping that Jordan Zimmerman is not part of the Tigers in 2018, but if he is, listen back to previous podcasts and you can hear what we thought about it. Anything else, sir?
Really quick note, kind of a part of Vito's trivia. We've done trivia questions for you that I've stumped you on numerous times, really every single time, I think. I feel that way, at least. Well, regarding Alan Trammell and why he belongs in the Hall of Fame, here's a quick trivia note to bring up, Doc. Consider, according to, John Morosi, something that he tweeted out, he said that consider the complete list of all Major League Baseball players with 2,000 plus starts at shortstop, 1,000 plus runs batted in, 150 plus home runs. And that list does consist of Cal Ripken Jr., Derek Jeter, and Alan Trammell. And guess what? Cal Ripken Jr. is a Hall of Famer. Derek Jeter will be a Hall of Famer. That is why Alan Trammell should also be a Hall of Famer, no doubt, in my mind. And you can tell, no doubt, in the mind of John Morosi as well from Fox Sports.
Now, Vito, I can break news too as well. Guess what? Giancarlo Stanton will not be a Detroit Tiger in 2018.
Oh, my God, no way.
Here first.
How did you get that news? Wow.
I heard that he's on the trade block, but my sources say, close to the dock, master the obvious, that the talks between the Tigers and the Marlins, non-existent.
They didn't even have a chance to break down. They were never there.
They were never there. So I had to break the news, let everybody know that Stanton, one of the prized hitters of this generation. I know because Miguel Cabrera has spent now 10 years with the Tigers. He's celebrated his 10th anniversary being a member of the Detroit Tigers. Still no World Series title with the Tigers, has one with the Marlins, but we can let everybody know, break the news. Giancarlo Stanton will not be wearing a Tigers uniform 2018. Sorry.
Really quick, Doc, a hot take here. Now, he's not going to the Tigers. We already know that. Now, he might be going to the Cardinals or the Giants. And these teams he has to waive his no-trade clause to. Well, the Giants are willing to pick up a ton of his contract. And the thing is, for the Giants, my hot take is it's not going to do them any good because look at how irrelevant the Giants were last year, similar to the Tigers. So getting Giancarlo Stanton, his big bat, won't upgrade them enough to become contenders and specifically World Series title contenders. So why are they making this move and going to deal top-tier prospects potentially as well from their farm system, which is already barren? So why make that move if you're the San Francisco Giants? It makes almost completely no sense to me. When you look at the Giants from an organizational standpoint, they are not in position to win right now, which is why you don't make a move for Giancarlo Stanton. And it's a specific reason why the Tigers aren't willing to make a move for Giancarlo Stanton as well right now. If he were to even be willing to waive his no-trade clause for the Tigers, which you've got to believe he would in anyways at this juncture in his career and with looking at the Tigers and where they stand as a Major League Baseball franchise right now.
Man, Vito, disappointing. Not that much appeal outside of Miguel Cabrera, maybe Michael Fulmer in 2018. Maybe, yeah, I would say there's probably no player that you probably want to go pay to see outside of those two for the
Nicholas
Tigers.
Castellanos, Jamer Candelario, Doc, big money to pay to go watch those guys at Comerica. You know it's going to happen from so many fans.
No
way. I know. Sad but true with the Tigers right now, Deck.
I would argue that. Yeah, I would argue that the weekend the Astros come to town might be the biggest weekend of the year. I would argue that.
Well, wouldn't you go watch a World Series champion, a team that might repeat? I want to go see Jose Altuve, George Springer, all those guys play. Justin Verlander.
Update here. Doc, the producer, reached out to Justin Verlander directly, man to man.
I saw. Well, via Twitter, not man to man, Twitter to Twitter. Yeah.
I've gotten interviews that way. And
yes, you have.
Justin Verlander, not even a like, not even a charity follow. So
sayonara, Doc, is what he said to you.
So Doc was rejected by Justin Verlander this week, and we'll see throughout the year because I think the goal will be, and I think we'll do it. We'll maybe make a bit of it. Who rejected Doc? Because you're the first person that rejects me. No, actually.
Oh, I love rejecting you.
You and Nick Schmiegel have rejected me. So
not just me.
So that's two. So now we can add Justin Verlander to that list, and maybe we'll tally it up, and we can have fun with it. Who rejected the Doc? So who should I reach out to next to see if they'll come on the podcast?
The cool thing is I'm in the same class as Justin Verlander with something because I rejected you too.
Michael Fulmer, yeah.
Well, everybody and everybody will reject you from the Tigers organization. We already know that's going to happen.
That's not true.
Well, we might have somebody that comes on the show too eventually from the Tigers now.
Exactly, Vito. We worm our way into a lot of things. Don't be such a hater. So you never know who will reply and show up on this podcast. You never know.
Doc, I will always be on this podcast, at least, and you will, I hope, as well. And I really strongly believe
bad.
Well, it is bad that you're going to be on this podcast for the long haul, yes.
Exactly.
And to all of you out there, thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Tigers Talk, and we'll talk to you once again next Wednesday for another fresh episode of Tigers Talk.